Let's look at some of the results from the Future of Work Mindset Assessment tool. So it's a 27-question survey across 3 areas. And over the past couple of years, I've gotten 198 responses. 59 alternative workers, these are solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, 111 full-time employees, and 30 full-time plus side hustle employees. And some interesting findings when you compare these different groups. So when you look at them overall and you ask them how are they doing from a range of completely stuck to thriving, it comes out pretty much as you might expect. Entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, they're making active choices for the career they want to create, so they typically are going to rate themselves a little higher. The full-time employees came in last, and interesting enough, the full-time plus side hustle employees are actually higher than the full-time employees. So we'll dig into what might be driving that. Common themes across all 3 groups were that people were open to new ideas and experiences. They're open to learning from outside of traditional learning institutions. People are increasingly looking to help people through their work. Their success is aligned with personal values, and they're pursuing work with the mindset of learning new skills. And this fits in with a lot of the shifts we talked about earlier around owning your learning. Some of the common struggles were people had a hard time testing ideas, seeing whether or not to go further. They didn't like the uncertainty of not knowing what they'd be doing, getting into a flow state at least once per week, being energized, and balancing deep work and breaks. While there are many similarities in terms of the challenges and ways that full-time and alternative workers are approaching work, there are some dramatic differences. So let's look at what those are. So if you look at the top 5 mindsets that the alternative workers rated most highly, you'll see that many of these overlap with the common themes I presented earlier. The one that stands out here is that they're more willing to make decisions to design the life they want. And if you compare them to full-time employees, this is exactly the thing that makes them radically different. These are the 2 questions in which alternative workers had a really big difference in responses from full-time workers. One was having the freedom and autonomy to work on things that matter to them, and 2 was making the decisions to design the life they want, even if it goes against the norm. These are probably the 2 mindsets that would typify somebody that wants to carve their own path, and ideally somebody in this course who is embracing this mindset as well. The top 5 challenges alternative workers face are testing ideas, getting into a flow state, balancing deep work and break, having a personal definition of success, and being part of in-person or virtual communities. So the themes here are about action, doing the work, finding balance, and figuring out how do you define success when you're no longer in the confines of a full-time work environment that might help you define it. What about full-time workers? This was a majority of the survey. Let's dive in and see what makes them different. So the top 5 mindsets, some are similar to the alternative workers. The one that jumps out here is that they're thinking more about a portfolio of skills and projects, even if they may not be related into the short term. This one's pretty interesting. You would think an alternative worker, that would be a top mindset for them. But as the career journey has become something that is much more around jumping to different companies, this makes a lot of sense in the full-time context. The top 5 challenges are around energy, getting into flow state, having the freedom and autonomy to work on things that matter, balancing work and breaks, and getting experience in a remote and global teams. The counterintuitive thing here is people with full-time jobs are more optimistic about the number of opportunities in today's world. Perhaps this is a reflection of some of the challenges of constantly needing to find new projects and gigs if you're an independent worker. Another thing that stood out was full-time employees are less experienced working globally and remotely. When asked, I am experienced working in global remote teams, the alternative workers much more strongly agreed than the full-time and full-time plus side hustle employees did. So what are workers with side gigs doing differently? We saw in the beginning that they rated a lot of these mindsets a lot higher than the full-time workers. So compared to full-time workers, side giggers are actually pretty interesting. I want to call out a couple things here. First, around time management. We saw before that the full-time workers really struggle with time management. Side giggers, probably because they're working on something else outside of work, have a good handle on how to manage their time. The second one is they're generating large numbers of ideas, and this is something full-time employees rated pretty lowly. And finally, they're starting to embrace that alternative worker mindset of making decisions to design the life they want, even if it goes against the norm.